2/3 of people buying a used EV say their biggest fear is the battery, but almost everything they've heard about it is wrong. Here's what the data actually shows. Here's where the fear comes from. Everyone has owned a phone, and everyone has watched the phone battery go from lasting all day to barely making it to lunch, usually within 2 or 3 years. The logic feels airtight. EV batteries are lithium-ion. Phone batteries are lithium-ion. Therefore, EV batteries must die the same way. That comparison sounds reasonable. It's also completely wrong. A phone battery is a small, cheap component with no thermal management, no software protection against overcharging, and no engineering behind it designed to survive a decade of heavy use. Your phone doesn't know or care whether it's being charged to 100% at 2 a.m. every night. There's no system protecting it. An EV battery is the opposite of that in almost every way. Car manufacturers have spent billions of dollars engineering battery systems that do exactly what your phone's battery management system doesn't: monitoring temperature in real time, limit charge and discharge boundaries, prevent overheating, and protect the cells from the conditions that cause rapid degradation. The battery pack in your EV has a cooling and heating circuit dedicated to software running constantly in the background, and a structural casing designed to survive crashes, debris impacts, and extreme weather. These are not the same technology. The only thing they share is chemistry, and even that's changing fast, with new LFP batteries moving away from the cobalt-heavy formulas of earlier packs entirely. The rumor that you'd need to replace your EV battery every 3 years circulated heavily when the first generation of modern EVs launched. It never happened, and yet the fear stuck because nobody pushed back hard enough with the actual numbers. How long EV batteries actually last? Let's put numbers to this. Most modern EV batteries are designed to last 200,000 to 300,000 miles. That's not a marketing claim. That's what independent testing and real-world data consistently show. Tesla's own impact report shows Model S and Model X batteries averaging just 12% degradation after 200,000 miles. A Stanford SLAC study published in Nature Energy found that real-world driving with acceleration, braking, and long periods parked actually extends battery life beyond what lab tests had projected. Real drivers may get roughly a third more life out of their batteries than earlier estimates suggested. For context, the average passenger vehicle in the United States gets scrapped at around 130,000 miles. That means the battery in most EVs is engineered to outlast the car itself. The US Department of Energy projects that today's EV batteries should last between 12 and 15 years in moderate climates, and 8 to 12 years in more extreme conditions. The average car on American roads right now is 12 and a half years old. For most EV drivers, the battery's service life will simply never come up. A 9-year-old Tesla Model S with 87,000 miles on it was independently tested and came back at 90% state of health. Not 70%, not 65%, 90% after nearly a decade of driving, with that figure on course to degrade at roughly 1% per year going forward. At that rate, the battery hits 70% threshold that most warranties define as end of life somewhere around 30 years from when it was new. That is not a technology you need to fear. What happens instead of failure? This is the part most battery conversations miss entirely. EV batteries don't fail the way people imagine. They don't hit a wall at 100,000 miles. They don't suddenly stop working one morning and leave you with a dead car. What actually happens is gradual, slow, and largely invisible in daily driving. The technical term is degradation. Every charge cycle causes a tiny, fractional reduction in total capacity. The degradation curve drops more steeply in the first 50,000 miles, then flattens out significantly. By the time a battery has been through its initial settling period, the annual capacity loss becomes small enough that most owners genuinely can't feel it without looking at the numbers. What this means practically is that a 5-year-old EV with 60,000 miles on it might show 94% of its original range. The car still drives, the range is still more than adequate. The battery is still functioning exactly as it's supposed to, just with a small fraction of its capacity gone, permanently. That's degradation. It's normal, and it doesn't mean the battery needs replacing. The distinction matters because failure and degradation are completely different things. Failure is when a component stops working. Degradation is when a component works slightly less efficiently over time. Every car battery, combustion or electric, degrades. The question is how fast and how far, and with modern EV batteries, the answer to both is slower and less than almost anyone expected. When batteries actually get replaced. Real battery replacements happen in three situations. First is a manufacturing defect. These do occur. The Chevrolet Bolt fires in the United States were caused by a defect in cells manufactured by LG, not an inherent flaw in the technology, but a factory error. GM replaced those batteries. Owners paid nothing. That's exactly how a manufacturing recall is supposed to work. And it's no different from the tens of thousands of ICE recalls that happen every year. A defect in one production run doesn't mean the entire technology is flawed. The second is physical damage. An EV battery pack sits under the floor of the vehicle. Road debris, serious collisions, and off-road damage can cause physical harm to the pack. This is genuinely expensive when it happens. A rock that would have taken out an oil pan on a gas car can puncture a battery pack, and the repair costs significantly more. Most manufacturers are aware of this and building in protection accordingly. The third is abnormal fast degradation, falling below 70% state of health faster than expected. This is precisely what battery warranties exist to cover. If none of those three things happen, a battery replacement is simply not something most EV drivers will ever deal with. Subscribe if you want more EV content that skips the noise and gets to what actually matters. More coming. The reality of replacement costs. Battery replacement does get discussed as though it's an inevitable $15,000 to $20,000 bill. It's worth understanding what that number actually represents and why it's become less relevant over time. The cost to replace an EV battery pack has been dropping steadily. In 2008, the cost per kilowatt hour of battery capacity was roughly 10 times higher than it was in 2022. Manufacturing scale, improved chemistry, and more efficient production have all pushed costs down. By the time today's EVs are old enough that degradation becomes a real concern for most owners, replacement costs will be significantly lower than they are today. Battery warranties also shift the financial risk substantially. Every automaker currently offers at least an 8-year, 100,000-mile battery warranty. Hyundai and Kia extend that to 10 years. These warranties don't just cover complete failure, they cover degradation. If your battery drops below 70% state of health within the warranty period, the manufacturer repairs or replaces it. You pay nothing. There's also a growing industry of specialists who can replace individual modules rather than the entire pack. Rather than swapping out a 75 kilowatt unit wholesale, a targeted repair to the specific group of cells causing the problem can restore performance at a fraction of the cost. A full pack replacement is increasingly the last resort, not the default. What most owners experience instead. Here's what the actual experience of EV ownership looks like for the vast majority of drivers. They bought the car, they drive it, the battery slowly loses a small percentage of its capacity over the years of use. They never notice a dramatic change. They never get a repair bill for the battery. They eventually sell or trade the car in, often for a newer EV, long before the battery becomes an issue. A 2016 Tesla Model S, bought used, driven for 5 years, tested independently at 9 years old and 87,000 miles, 90% state of health, still covering 240 miles on a charge in average conditions, still working exactly as intended. That's not an outlier. That's what happens when batteries are properly engineered, properly managed, and properly charged. Most EV owners will never replace their battery. They'll keep driving with a range that's slightly lower than it was when the car was new, a range that still gets them everywhere they need to go, and they'll never think twice about it. What affects battery lifespan the most? The owners who see the worst degradation have few habits in common. Frequent DC fast charging is the biggest one. Level 2 home charging, slow overnight charging, is the gentlest way to top up a lithium-ion battery. Fast chargers push high current through the cells quickly. While modern battery management software limits the damage significantly, consistent reliance on fast charging over many years does accelerate degradation compared to primarily charging at home. Charging to 100% regularly and letting the battery sit at full charge for extended periods adds unnecessary stress to the cells. Most manufacturers and charging apps recommend a daily limit of 80% for this reason. Keeping the battery between 20 and 80% for day-to-day driving is the standard advice for a reason. It's where lithium-ion chemistry is under the least strain. Temperature is the other major variable. Batteries perform best in moderate conditions. Extreme heat causes faster degradation. Extreme cold reduces range temporarily, but doesn't cause the same long-term damage as heat. Vehicles with active thermal management, a cooling and heating circuit that keeps the pack in its optimal temperature range, handle both ends of the spectrum far better than early EVs without those systems. The standard SLAC study added something genuinely counterintuitive to this picture. Hard acceleration, actually pressing the pedal, doesn't accelerate battery aging. If anything, the dynamic discharge profile of real-world driving with variable acceleration and regenerative braking preserves batteries better than the steady, constant discharge rate used in most lab tests, with variable acceleration and regenerative braking, preserves batteries better than the steady, constant discharge rate in most lab tests. The way people actually drive is gentler on batteries than researchers assumed. Good habits matter. They can extend the use of life of a battery by years. But even without perfect charging discipline, modern EV batteries are built to absorb a significant amount of imperfect use and still outlast the rest of the car. The truth about EV battery replacement. Here's what all of this adds up to. EV batteries don't behave like people expect. The phone comparison falls apart the moment you look at how differently they're designed, managed, and protected. The 300,000-mile service life that independent data supports is not a theoretical ceiling. It's what well-maintained battery packs from a decade ago are on track to achieve. Most batteries don't fail suddenly. They age slowly, lose a small fraction of their capacity over years of use, and continue working reliably for the life of the vehicle. When something does go wrong, a defect, physical damage, unusual degradation, warranties cover it, and targeted module-level repairs are increasingly available as an alternative to full-pack replacement. For the overwhelming majority of EV drivers, battery replacement is simply not something they will ever deal with. The fear was always built on a comparison that didn't hold, rumors that never materialized, and a lack of real-world data that we now have in abundance. The data is in, the batteries work, and they'll almost certainly still be working long after you've moved on to whatever you drive next. Drop a comment below. What's your current EV? And have you ever checked your battery state of health? Subscribe for more EV content that cuts through the noise and gives you the numbers that actually matter.